Few things stir as much apprehension as the moment of passing. There's no way to know exactly what comes next, but some voices have managed to bring comfort and clarity to this profound uncertainty. Louise Hay was one of those voices. With her direct and gentle way of speaking about life, she also offered invaluable reflections on what awaits us after death. For those in their senior years, these words are not just comforting, but essential. It's not about blind faith, nor empty promises. It's about facing the end with more serenity, without fear, with a broader understanding of life's cycle. When she said that death isn't an end, but a transition, her intention was to free people from anxiety and attachment. According to her, the spirit moves on, conscious, light, free from the physical and emotional suffering that often marks the final years of life. You don't have to believe everything right away, but it's worth listening carefully. Louise Hay never imposed ideas. She invited reflection. And perhaps this is the time to listen with an open heart. If you are over 60 or know someone who is, knowing this could change a lot. It can transform how we deal with loss, how we speak with our loved ones, how we internally prepare for what's to come. That's precisely why this video exists. To inform, but also to bring peace. If this touches you in any way, please consider liking and subscribing. It could be the beginning of a deeper journey of understanding about existence, because what's at stake here isn't religion or belief, but rather a calmer, more humane way of dealing with something inevitable. Louise Hay spoke naturally about passing on. For her, dying was like taking off a heavy coat after a long winter. The body ages, aches, limits. But what we truly are, that continues. Her view wasn't based on dogma, but on experiences, observations, and what she called inner wisdom. Every person, she believed, has within them ancient knowledge, a kind of remembrance that death isn't the end. When the body stops, consciousness continues. This idea, echoed by many authors, gains clear simplicity in her words. There's no punishment on the other side, no judgment, only a reunion with a more loving dimension where we can continue learning, feeling, evolving. For older folks, this can be a great relief. Many seniors carry fears they rarely verbalize. Fear of pain, of loneliness at the end, of leaving things unfinished, of not being remembered. Louise Hay said these fears don't need to dictate our final years. They are understandable, but they can be dissolved with a new way of looking at things. And she didn't just say this idly. She went through profound losses, faced serious illnesses, and cared for people in their final moments. From these experiences, she developed a calmer way of thinking about the end. For her, facing death naturally wasn't giving up, but accepting that living and dying are part of the same road. And that road continues even when our feet no longer touch it. Another point Louise always emphasized was the importance of resolving emotional unfinished business while we are alive, not out of fear of what's to come, but for lightness. She believed that stored feelings, old resentments, and unspoken words weigh more than aging itself. When she spoke of death, she was actually speaking of life, of how to live it with more truth, less guilt, more presence. And that is something we can all do now, regardless of age. Granting forgiveness, being grateful, allowing ourselves to love and be loved. These are simple gestures, but they completely change our preparation for departure. After all, according to her, nobody takes possessions or titles with them. We only take what we felt and what we learned. It's not about denying pain or pretending there's no suffering. Louise Hay never romanticized the end of life. She knew that old age can be difficult, that the body fails, that loss of autonomy hurts. But she also showed that even in these moments, there's room for inner connection. The silence of a room can be frightening, but it can also become a temple of wisdom. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" she taught to ask, "What can I learn from this?" This shift in perspective is powerful, and when the end approaches, this way of seeing allows a person to say goodbye, not with despair, but with a certain peace, like someone who understands they are going home, not falling into an abyss. This idea of going home doesn't have to be seen as fantasy. For Louise Hay, it was an image that helped calm the mind. She said that many of our fears about death arise because we've been taught to fear the unknown. But the unknown isn't always dangerous. Sometimes it's just a place we can't quite remember yet. Death, according to her, is this return to a broader dimension of our existence. Not a strange place, but a state where everything makes more sense, where pains cease to exist and burdens disappear. This image, so different from what many carry since childhood, has the power to transform how we live our final days. When the mind stops fighting the inevitable, the heart can rest. For those caring for an elderly person, these words can also serve as a guide. Caring for someone at the end of life isn't just about managing medications and appointments. It's also about learning to offer presence, silence, and a listening ear. Louise Hay said that the most important thing at this stage is to make the person feel seen, heard, and respected. It's not always necessary to say much. Sometimes, one hand holding another says it all. She believed that the transition becomes smoother when the surroundings are at peace. This applies to both the one departing and those who remain. Instead of making the end a moment filled with fear, guilt, or tension, we can transform this time into something more intimate, more genuine. And for that, we need to be emotionally available, even if we don't know exactly what to say. She also spoke about signs. Louise Hay believed that those who have passed on remain present in other ways, in a scent, in a dream, in a memory that appears out of nowhere. For many, this might seem like fantasy, but for her it was just another proof that life is greater than what the eyes can see. According to her, consciousness is energy, and energy does not disappear. It changes form, but it continues to exist. This idea, simple as it is, can bring real comfort, knowing that a father, a mother, a partner who has passed on still lives in some frequency, however subtle, helps to ease the weight of their absence. And it's not about living in the past, but about recognizing that true bonds are not broken by death. Death, for Louise Hay, doesn't need to be a taboo. She spoke about it with the same naturalness as she spoke about aging, getting sick, or loving. Taking death out of the realm of fear and bringing it into the field of understanding is one of the legacies she left. Especially for older adults, this can completely change the experience of the end. She suggested that everyone create an intimate moment of preparation, not as a formal ritual, but as a simple gesture of acceptance. Writing a letter, thanking oneself for everything lived, looking at an old photograph with fondness, small acts that help the soul organize itself before departure. Because dying with peace for her was as important as living with dignity. One point she always emphasized was that the way we think directly influences how we feel. And this includes thoughts about death. If you believe everything will end in suffering or emptiness, fear grows. But if you can build a broader, calmer image, the body responds with more lightness. It's not about denying reality, but about how we choose to interpret it. Louise Hay believed that thought is a powerful tool, and that, even in our final days, it can be used to generate peace. Often a change in thought can even alleviate physical pain. She observed this in people she worked with and said that one's mental state influences even how death occurs. Even for those who have never heard of her, these ideas might resonate, because deep down, every human being wishes to understand what happens after their eyes close. The difference is that few have the courage to speak about it clearly. Louise Hay did. And she did it without imposing, without frightening, without manipulating. She simply offered a more human, gentler vision. This doesn't eliminate the pain of farewells, but it helps build a path for them to be less traumatic. And perhaps that is what so many seniors need now. Not definitive answers, but a calmer way to look at the unknown. A chance to prepare not with panic, but with awareness. Because living well is important, but departing with serenity is too. It's common for the mind to return more frequently to memories as we age. Louise Hay said this is no coincidence. According to her, we approach the end of life with the need to understand the whole. Memories return not just out of nostalgia, but as part of a process of integration. And it is at this moment that many people realize the value of certain simple gestures, choices made, relationships lived. She encouraged seniors to look at their journey with compassion. Not to deny mistakes, but to recognize lessons learned. This loving gaze at oneself helps to alleviate old guilt and accept one's own story. Because when a person feels at peace with what they have lived, the end does not seem so threatening. It becomes just another chapter. Another point that deserves attention is how she viewed hospitals and nursing homes. Louise Hay believed that even in these environments, often cold or sterile, it's possible to create an atmosphere of warmth. A gentle look, a kind word, a genuine gesture of care. She said that the energy present in the final days matters a great deal. And this depends not only on the person who is passing on, but also on those who care for them, those who visit, those who are around. Transforming the environment can also transform the experience of death. When there is respect, listening, and presence, pain decreases. Suffering does not disappear, but it loses the weight of abandonment. And that can make all the difference, especially for those who fear dying alone or unseen. Louise Hay said that death is not unfair. It is simply part of life's natural process. Aging, falling ill, and departing are all part of the same flow. The injustice, she said, lies in living without awareness, without gratitude, without making the most of our time. Therefore, even in the face of a serious diagnosis or advancing age, she always suggested returning to the present. Breathing deeply, paying attention to the now, valuing every moment. This doesn't eliminate fear, but it reduces its power. When we are truly present, anxiety loses its grip. And often, it is in this state that the most significant moments occur. A reunion, a request for forgiveness, a hug that was decades overdue. The awareness of death can open doors to gestures that were postponed for too long. She also spoke about what comes next, but not in the sense of spiritual maps or rules of the afterlife. For Louise Hay, what matters isn't the format of the after, but the feeling of continuity. She believed that love is never lost, that what we feel for people, for experiences, continues with us, and that this vibration is what connects us to the next plane. Whether it's a place, a state of consciousness, an energy field, it matters little. The essential thing is to know that we don't disappear, that what is most true about us doesn't die with the body. This view, though simple, carries enormous power, because it allows a person to say goodbye with less fear and more confidence, not like someone vanishing, but like someone changing form. The impact of this is direct on how we view grief as well. Those who understand death as a transition grieve differently. They grieve, yes, but with more calm. Louise Hay taught that we can cry without despair, remember without pain, and move on without guilt. She said that honoring someone's memory isn't about clinging to the past, but about living the present well, bringing into our current days what we learned from those who departed, repeating a gesture, upholding a value, recalling a piece of advice. All of this keeps alive the presence of those who are no longer physically here. For seniors who have lost partners, siblings, or friends, this is especially important. Knowing that the connection doesn't break, only transforms, brings relief, and strengthens them for their own steps forward. Louise Hay reinforced the idea that dying can be an act of surrender, not of loss. A conscious, peaceful surrender, almost like someone finishing a long journey and preparing to rest. She said that everything we experience contributes to our evolution, and that no experience is wasted. Even pains, regrets, failures, everything has value. And that upon departing we carry with us not objects but understanding. This vision changes everything. It changes the way we deal with the time we have left, with the relationships we still have, with the silence that often fills our days. Above all, it changes the way we see ourselves, not as bodies that fail, but as consciousnesses that continue learning until the end and beyond. Louise Hay was never rushed in her talks. She knew that some topics require time to be absorbed. When she spoke about death, she did so with a serenity that didn't frighten. On the contrary, it brought relief. For those in their final years of life, hearing something like this can be transformative. It can make every morning lived with more presence and every night faced with more acceptance. Instead of counting the days left, the person begins to value the day they have. And that changes everything. That changes conversations with children, the way one looks at old photos, the way one savors a cup of tea. Death ceases to be a constant threat and becomes merely a natural possibility which will come in its own time, neither before nor after. Many seniors fear becoming a burden. Louise Hay always challenged this notion. She said that every human being at any age holds value simply by existing. We don't need to be useful by the world's standards to deserve respect or affection. Aging doesn't diminish our worth. It merely changes how we express it. She insisted that the presence of an older person, even if silent, has power. Their story, their listening, their experience, all of this is essential for younger generations. When a senior departs in peace, that peace resonates. It leaves a mark on those who remain. Teaching this is one of the most important legacies she left, because it's not enough to speak about death with courage. We must also remember that life, until the very last second, has purpose. And that is why Louise Hay lived consciously until the end. Not as someone who denies reality, but as one who embraces it. She faced physical pain, saw friends die, experienced losses, but held firm to her vision. She continued to speak about love, about forgiveness, about the importance of every thought. And when her time came, she passed away at home, surrounded by tranquility. It was not a coincidence. It was the result of a life consistent with what she preached. Her example is an invitation, not an obligation. A reminder that we can prepare for our end more consciously. Not to control the moment, but to live it with more dignity. And that is something anyone can seek, even if they have never reflected on it before. By bringing these ideas to this video, the goal is not to convince, but to open space for you to think. Perhaps you'll agree with everything. Perhaps you'll disagree with parts. And that's perfectly fine. The important thing is for the topic to be on the table, for death not to be treated as a taboo, but as a stage of life. A stage that deserves preparation, conversation, serenity. Louise Hay said that silence around death only increases fear. Speaking about it with respect and clarity is an act of care, especially for those who already feel that time is shorter. And if this video can help someone face this with less anguish, then it was already worthwhile. Because sometimes all someone needs to hear is that it's okay, that they don't need to be afraid. Life does not end with the last heartbeat. It ends when we stop feeling connected to it, and that can happen at 90 or at 40. Louise Hay reminded us of this, that as long as there is consciousness, there is a possibility for evolution. Therefore, until the very last breath, there can be learning, there can be forgiveness, there can be healing. She said that it's never too late to change a thought, to improve a relationship, to leave something better than we found it. This message is powerful, especially for those who feel they are reaching the end without having done everything they wished. Because it is always possible to do something, a gesture, a word, a decision. The end of life does not have to be the end of hope. It can be the beginning of a new understanding. If this video brought you any relief, clarification, or even a new perspective, please share it with those you love. Sometimes, a message like this can make a significant difference in someone's life. And if you'd like to continue receiving reflections like this, please subscribe to the channel. Here we discuss profound topics with respect, without exaggeration, focusing on what truly matters. Louise Hay's message is not just for those who are passing on, but for everyone who is still here, living, learning, and seeking to understand the meaning of it all. May you continue in peace, and may each day be lived with the calm awareness of someone who knows that the journey continues one way or another, and that it's perfectly all right not to know exactly how.